Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Welcome to the golf webinar series we're going to be having here at Links Fitness Club. So we're going to start here with a series of 4 webinars where we break down the golf swing piece by piece, kind of piggybacking off of the webinar we had a couple weeks ago where we talked about golf fitness and how it relates to the swing. We're going to be doing the same thing, but breaking the swing down piece by piece. So today we're going to start with setup and posture. So we're going to spend a lot of time discussing how that pertains to your golf swing, how that pertains to just your general fitness as it pertains to your posture. And we'll go through some things you can do to assess your own posture and exercises you can do to make some improvements on that. So I'm joined here by Ryan Peffer. He's our Director of Instruction here at Links. He's a PGA professional. He's also the assistant golf coach at Boston College. My name is Brian Cammarata. If you don't know me, I'm a coach here at Links Fitness. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. It's a lot of letters. And a Titleist Golf Institute golf performance coach. So what I want to start off with is just talking about posture in general. I'm going to share my screen here just to go over some of the conceptions, misconceptions we have about posture and then how it relates to the golf swing. Okay, so if you see my screen there, we've got, quote, common postural problems. So if you look on the left, we've got typically ideal posture, all right? And that's, I want you guys to remember that posture is not good or bad. It's really on a spectrum, okay? So throughout your life, throughout your day, you're gonna find yourself in different postures. And I think the goal is to try to be able to be resilient in all of those postures and move through those postures pain-free, okay? So ideally, you wanna be on the left here. But I think the important thing to notice here is that this posture, which is known as ideal, is still slightly curved in your upper back. That's called a kyphotic curve. And then the lumbar spine back here is slightly curved as well. Okay, that's called a lordotic curve. This is completely natural. That's how your spine is. Your spine is not straight up and down from your skull down to your hips, okay? So when we're talking about posture, it's just manipulating that spine in different ways and trying to do it pain-free. We'll talk about how that pertains to your golf swing as well. So just a couple of different postures you'll see from people day to day, and you'll see this in your own life. You've got sway back, which is more of a tucked pelvis. You've got a military back where you've got that tucked pelvis, but very upright. And then flat back, which I think a lot of people would say is good posture, but in fact, you do want to maintain that natural lordotic and kyphotic curve in your spine. And then this one we want to be concerned about, especially when it comes to golf, okay? This is excessive lordosis on the bottom, so excessive curvature of the lower back, and then excessive curvature of the upper back, okay? So when we look at the golf swing and what kind of postures we can start off at, we're mostly going to run into problems when it comes into kyphosis, which is that excessive rounding, and then also lordosis, which is that excessive rounding of the lower back, okay? So what does the golf swing look like as far as those postures? Well, we'll go into 3 main types of postures when it comes to golf, okay? And this is according to the Titleist Performance Institute. So if you look on the left, we've got what's known as neutral posture, all right? So we've got a pretty straight line from this gentleman's back of his head down to his butt, okay? So you still see he has that natural curvature in his upper back, and his lower back is pretty flat, all right? This is what we call natural. This is what neutral. And this is, from my point of view, is an ideal posture to try to learn. And, you know, I want to make it clear, just because you have a C-type posture or an S-type posture, which we'll get into, doesn't mean you can't play good golf from that posture, okay? You can. In fact, let's go to the C posture right here. You'll see that the C posture is that excessive curvature of the upper back, okay? This is called thoracic flexion, where that upper back is rounded forward, and we don't have a very good hip hinge here, and we still have a flat lower back, so the lower back's in an okay shape. But that excessive upper back posture is gonna probably prevent you from making a full turn in your swing, okay? So what I want you to do, everybody, right now, just take your arms, cross them over, left arm over right arm, and we're gonna just really hump your upper back, like get that upper back nice and rounded, okay? just like this guy has in the picture. And now I want you to turn right, turn left, turn right, turn left. Okay? Just kind of take a note of how that feels. And now I want you to stand up tall, get your butt squeezed, feel like you're in a, what we would call a neutral posture. And now turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right. So we should feel that that second posture feels more natural and you're actually able to make a better turn. So now having said that, let's go look at Jack Nicklaus. Probably the greatest player ever to play the game. So if you look at his setup posture here, what does that look like? That looks like classic C posture, okay? He's got that rounded upper back, pretty flat lower back, but he's got that rounded upper back. And the reason I'm showing you this is to show you that it's possible to swing with all of these different types of setups, but I think from a neutral perspective, it gives you the most options with your swing. And Ryan can talk about that in a second, just about what the differences in your swing can be and should be based on the way you set up. So let's just go back to here and let's talk about, so we covered the C posture. Now let's cover the S posture. So this is where we have an excessive curvature of your lower back. Now, to me, this actually isn't that bad as far as his lower back's concerned. He's got a little bit of excessive lordotic curve, but that's not too bad. But we would technically call this an S posture. So you can see how it makes an S from the base of his skull down to his butt. So you're going to run into problems with this posture as well. This posture concerns me a little bit more because you start to invite some more problems with lower back pain. All right. So let's do the same thing we just did with the C posture, excuse me, and do it with the S posture. So we're going to go here and kind of have this excessive lower back curve. And I want you to kind of arch your back as high as you can. And then rotate left, rotate right, rotate left, rotate right. You should feel immediately there's a little, if that's not tight in your lower back, then you're Superman, okay? So now we get back to a more neutral curve and try that turn again. Should feel like you have more room to turn. You should feel way less stress in your lower back. So it is possible to swing with all of these, postures, but with the C and the S curvatures, you do invite a little bit more room for injury, especially in the lower back, and that's where the S posture, to me, is the most problematic. So Ryan, I want to throw it over to you just in terms of what you see with students on a day-to-day basis and how you work with different people with these different setups.
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to mention, when you talk about the C posture that Nicklaus had or someone like Colin Montgomery, typically they have more upright golf swings. So if you look back at like top players today versus what we saw maybe 10 to 20 years ago or even more, you're not going to see a whole lot of C posture. Montgomery was probably the last great player to swing that way. And if you look at his golf swing on video, or if you remember it, it's fairly upright. So that's just typical pattern that you'll see. Now, in terms of what I wanted to mention with you, or what I wanted to cover with you today is what I typically see is a lot of C posture, particularly from people that don't have a whole lot of flexibility or have the best range of motion, or they're just maybe sitting at a desk all day, especially right now when we're inside. I would imagine it's probably going to be pretty relevant. But what you want to see is really that straight back address, because what happens is something called early extension. Now, Brian, were you going to touch on that a little bit later? Or you just want to stick mainly to the address?
You go ahead. You can cover it now.
Okay. So early extension is really when a player gets set up. One of the things that can cause it is if you are too bent over, you have that C posture. Basically, if you were to swing and try to stay in that posture, you would hit the ground first, maybe a foot or 18 inches behind the golf ball. So essentially what has to happen, if you're not set up properly, if you've got too much C curve or you're too bent over, in your golf swing, you have to what we call early extend. So in a good golf swing with proper posture at address, you're going to extend, but it's after you strike the golf ball, because you see people fall through, they're fully extended in an upright position. But if you are too bent over, or you have too much C curve, then generally what's going to happen is you're going to have to create that in order to hit the golf ball well. And that can be done successfully with the driver, but if you got the ball on the turf, it's going to be really difficult to make that compensation in your golf swing and strike the ball solidly. So if you're too bent over or you're in that C posture, you've got to early extend in order to hit the ball off the tee. Now, the other thing that I see a lot of that can lead to early extension in the golf swing is if your setup is good, all right, you've got that accomplished, good posture, you get to the top of your swing, and if you, what we call cross the line, that means you're crossing the target line with the shaft of the club, then as a result, the club gets steeped, and again, it would hit the ground first if you don't early extend to strike the ball. So if your setup's good, but you cross the target line at the top, that can lead to early extension. Another thing that can lead to early extension in the golf swing is if you get set up in a good posture, you get to a good spot at the top of your swing, but then you pull the club down too steeply, basically using your hands and arms first. What happens is you're going to extend again. And then the last thing that I commonly see with players that leads to early extension is if they get set up well, they get to a good position at the top, but then what happens is they slide too much. If you slide towards the target instead of pivot towards the target with your lower body, what's going to happen is you're going to extend in order to strike the ball solidly. So those are 4 or 5 ways that you can create early extension in your golf swing, basically as a necessary compensation that something else went wrong. So although you want to be in a good neutral posture at address, you've got to make sure that your golf swing is fundamentally sound, or you're going to have to create it later, and that just makes it tough to be consistent.
Hey Ryan, I mean, you mentioned Jack Nicklaus, Colin Montgomery, a couple really good players with that C-type posture. Is that something where just in the modern teaching, we've just discovered that, that C posture just makes it a lot more difficult to make solid contact? Or was that something, in the 60s and 70s, Arnold Palmer had a little bit of the C posture at address. Was that just something where the players now are more athletic, where they're able to get in a better neutral position at the beginning? And is that just kind of how the game's evolved?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, golf swings generally are more flatter today because players are able to turn deeper. What causes the club to get upright in the backswing, a lot of times with that C posture, you're just not able, as you're demonstrating, you're not able to make a really deep turn. And so the hands and arms have to lift to get the club up there. And the higher it is at the top, generally the steeper it's going to be in the downswing. To get back to the golf ball. So now players, I mean, in teaching has evolved to a point where these guys are really athletes that you're watching on television. If you go to a tour event and see these guys up close, it'll resonate with you. And a lot of times these high-level players, I mean, they could be playing other professional sports if they so choose because of the level of athleticism. And their range of motion is just so good that they're able to leverage that in their golf swing. And if you're in a good neutral posture, it's going to make it a lot easier.
And let me just touch on the S posture again, because the S posture is more what I see from the general gym going population. So if you talk about an S posture, it's more of what we call global extension, which is this extended posture where we're standing up straight, but our shoulders are pinned back and our butt is sticking out. Okay. So the thing that usually accompanies this is called anterior pelvic tilt. All right. And so what that is if you notice on the bottom of this picture, his lower back, like I said before, this one's actually not too extreme, but his lower back is excessively curved. And the reason it's excessively curved is because that pelvis is tucked forward and it sticks your butt up, okay? So if you picture your pelvis like a bowl, if that bowl is tilted forward, the back of the bowl sticks up, and in this case, that's your butt. So you walk around like this, and when you address the golf ball, you're like this. So if you try to take a swing from this position, you're already putting a lot of shear force, which is a rotational force, on your lower back. You can play that way without pain. Maybe you don't get pain today, maybe you don't get pain tomorrow. Eventually, you're gonna have back pain if you swing with that type of setup. So what are the things we can do to address some of that anterior pelvic tilt? Well, one thing we can work on is finding a neutral spine, okay? So one of the best drills for that, and Ryan's gone over this because he's doing our golf fitness program, it's called cat-cow, okay? So we're just gonna go through some cat-cow here real quick, just to show you what that neutral spine feels like and should look like. So if I'm in cat-cow, I'm gonna be on all fours, everything stacked, my wrists under my elbows, under my shoulders, and then my knees under my hips. From here, I'm gonna just do a segmented cat-cow. So in this case, I'm just gonna move my hips in and out. So from here, I'm going to stick my butt out and then tuck my butt underneath. So you'll notice this is a little bit more like a C posture. This is a little bit more like an S posture. All right, so what I want you to do is get down into this posture. You can do it now if you want, and tuck that butt in and out. And when we're gonna get really extended, and then we're gonna get really flexed, and then I want you to go halfway in between. When you're at that halfway point, that's your neutral spine, okay? So your neutral spine is not gonna be the same as somebody else's, and I want you to be able to get that feeling of what that neutral spine is. Because a lot of times when we set up to the ball, we might have mobility restrictions, but a lot of time it's body awareness. We just don't know what the proper alignment is, and we don't know what it feels like. So this is the best drill to be able to feel that neutral spine. So you can kind of think to yourself, bad, bad, good, bad, bad, good, okay? So that's the first part, that's the hips. Then we wanna move to the thoracic spine. So this is the top part of your swing. So if you're really rounded in that position, this is kind of that C posture we were talking about. So we're gonna keep the hips still, but we're gonna press into the ground, get the arms nice and long, and then pinch the shoulder blades together. Push away from the ground, pinch the shoulder blades together, and then go about halfway. And that's where we feel we're a little bit more neutral, okay? Now we can put the two together. So we're gonna use the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine together. So we're gonna push away from the ground, tuck the butt, and then we're gonna stick that butt out, pinch the shoulder blades together, head comes up to be in line with the rest of the body, and then we're gonna go into the middle, and we wanna feel like that's where our neutral spine is, all right? So that's a great drill to be able to get an idea of, if I set up automatically in cat-cow, and I'm already like this, I've probably got a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt going, and I've probably got a little bit of S posture with my golf swing, all right? So that's number one. If you feel like you are in that posture a little bit, there's a couple things we can do. One is we can work on some glute bridges to be able to build some power and some strength in those glutes. So the first thing when we do a glute bridge is we want to feel like that back is flat against the floor. So if we automatically sit down on the floor and we've got this big space between our back and the floor, again, that's an anterior pelvic tilt. That means that we need to tuck the pelvis under and flatten the back, okay? So when we do that, we flatten the back. You can't get the hand underneath. We have our feet flat against the ground, and then we're gonna bridge up, squeeze the glutes, come back down. You do not have to go as high as you can, because then we're cranking through our lower back some more, and you've got what's called lumbar extension instead of hip extension, okay? So S curves to me, and Ryan, maybe you can hop in here. Do you see these more often than C curves? And do you think they're more problematic as it pertains to injuries?
Well, teaching at links, I definitely see more S curves than I have in the past. At a typical country club, I see more S curves, particularly athletes that coach at Boston College. And I think a lot of that has to do with and both. But overall, I see a combination of the two. I just want to give you a quick tip to help you find a good neutral posture when you're at address. And basically, and I think this is the easiest way to do it that I've found, when you get set up, okay, to hit a shot, just take the golf club in your left hand if you're a right-handed player and put it right down your spine and then grab it near the club head, okay? So right here, I've got a pretty neutral spine angle. If I had a C curve, what I'd find is there's a gap here. It's not touching at my tailbone, and it's not in between my shoulders. The C curve is going to do this. If it's an S curve, then I'm going to have a gap here, just like Brian had when he was on the floor, showing you that. So basically, get set up, just take the club down your spine, and make sure that it's touching between your shoulders and it's touching at your tailbone, okay? Then you know you're in a good neutral posture, because it's really easy to slip out of that if you don't monitor it periodically. The other way to do it at home is just to get in front of a mirror. You might be surprised when you look at yourself in the bathroom holding a golf club and you see, oh, wow, I'm really starting to lose my posture. I need to feel that again. And for me, I have a tendency to sometimes go to the C posture. So I try to just feel like my spine is long and push my rear end out a little bit at address, and it helps me feel like my spine is extended.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things you said there that I like, and we're gonna share and look at some of this as it pertains to a hip hinge. So using that drill that Ryan just talked about, where you're holding that, it could be a stick, it could be your golf club, whatever it is, you're holding that behind your back and you're hinging back. A lot of people's issues with setting up to the ball have to do with them not being able to properly hold a hip hinge, okay? So poor posture at setup can be related to the hip hinge. Now, it's kind of funny that she looks like Jack Nicklaus there on the left, but no, that wouldn't be taught nowadays. She looks a little bit more like Rory McIlroy here on the right. So you can see with that proper hip hinge, that's what it should look like on the right. With the left, she's not really hinging at the hip. She's more just rounding at her upper back. So what does that mean for your setup? Well, the setup is going to be compromised a little bit. And then as Ryan talked about earlier, early extension is where you're not able to hold that hip hinge throughout the swing and you extend too early. So that's hip extension. So I want to talk about a couple of things with the hip hinge that we can go over. So body awareness is another one where, Ryan just said, if you go ahead and look at yourself in the mirror, you might just be shocked at the way you look just because you have no awareness of your body, all right? So with a hip hinge, the best way to practice this is with something called the Romanian deadlift, which is just a loaded hip hinge. So if we have our rod here, this is kind of like what Ryan was talking about. I want to stick my butt back, but I want my upper body and my torso to come forward like this. So you remain all points of contact with the stick in your back. So the biggest problem I see with people, clients especially, and this is not just golfers, this is all of my PT clients. When they go to hip hinge, they don't allow their upper body and their torso to come forward. And what happens is they stay tall. And from this position, if you stay tall and sit your butt back, what does that look like? It looks a lot like S posture. And my lower back, you can see there's already an excessive curvature. And if I keep going and going and going, the curve just gets worse and worse. So what you want to do, start from this position. You can hold anything in front of you, a kettlebell, dumbbell, a pillow, whatever you want. We're going to sit the butt back. And I want that torso to come forward so that you feel this all in your hamstrings and a little bit in your glutes. Come up, squeeze the glutes. Back down, butt comes back, torso comes forward. Okay? So that's a proper hip hinge. Now, if you go back to a golf swing, if you do not hip hinge at address, we look like this. In order to get down to the ball, we have to bend at our upper back and round our upper back. But instead, if we hinge back, address the ball here, now we're in a nice neutral position to make a full turn and a good swing, okay? So a hip hinge is very important, and it's one of the things I work on with not only golf clients, but regular, just my regular gym folks as well. And that really can relate to the early extension and how you're able to swing. One other thing as it pertains to that initial setup posture, and that's breathing mechanics, okay? So I know breathing is not the sexiest thing in the world, but we're gonna go over it because it's important. Paul Azinger said he didn't feel like he was ready to win major championships until he was able to control his breathing, okay? And that one of the things he was talking about was controlling your heart rate. But from a posture perspective, if we're breathing in a position where we're inhaling and never fully exhaling, what happens is our ribs stay high. This is called hyperinflation. This is not an economic term. This is a breathing term, okay? Our ribs stay high, and we're never able to get into that lower rib position, and we're always walking around like this, okay? So you can see here, that looks a lot like the S curve. So there's a couple things you can do to be able to kind of just dial in your breathing mechanics. One is just supine breathing from the ground. We're gonna put one hand on our chest and one hand on our belly, okay? The idea here is that we want the hand on the belly to rise before the hand on the chest. So we breathe in. And breathe all the way out. So the idea is that your exhale is about twice as long as your inhale, okay? And this will help you get out of this ribs up posture that promotes that S curve. So breathing mechanics are very important. As far as early extension, is there anything else you wanted to cover regarding that, Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an idea about how, or a concept about working through the golf swing with it, and trying to minimize it, or a drill to do to help stop it. So even though I said it might be a necessary adjustment if you're out of position, or if your sequence is off and your hands are coming down ahead and getting steep, assuming that a player is in a good position at the top, and assuming that when they are at the top of the swing, they are starting their downswing kind of from the ground up with their lower body first, then they're moving their torso in their pelvis, and then lastly the hands and arms are coming through. Sometimes what I see, if players is a good spot at the top, but then as they start to use their lower body, this is getting back to that hip hinge, they're just extending their pelvis towards the golf ball, and they're losing that angle between their spine and their hips. So what you want to feel, or what causes this a lot of times, is the right hip, or the trail hip here, starts to move, but the left hip isn't rotating, okay? It's just kind of staying idle. So what you really want to do in order to stay in good posture, when you get to the top of your swing, you want to really feel like that left hip turns over your left heel, okay? So if the left hip, or the lead hip for a right-handed player, the left hip pushes back over the heel, that can be tough to do if you have tight hamstrings, but you want to really try to feel this. So a good drill is, if you're on the range, if range is open, or you're at home, is to feel, take your golf bag back here and just push your left. When you get to the top, you want to see your right hip kind of push into your clubs, and then your left hip push into the clubs, or your left butt cheek, so to speak, as you start down, okay? So try to keep that rear end pushing back, and then and then pushing back on the way down. What you should feel as you try to load up in your backswing, you get set, and you should almost feel like that right glute squeezes a little bit as the left one pushes back, okay? So if you have trouble activating your glutes, it's going to be tough to stay in that posture and avoid early extension.
Yeah, and I think glute bridges, one of the things we talked about, is great for activating your glutes and being able to get out of that anterior tilt. Just a couple things in terms of that C posture and what do we do about it if we have it? Well, if we're in this kind of, like I said, this was global extension and we would call this global flexion. So you're flexed at the upper back. You know, this has happened to me. I have a 7-month-old daughter and I've found recently I've been in this flexed position a lot, okay? I've been carrying her, leaning over the bathtub, giving her a bath, pushing the stroller through the streets. You're gonna find yourself in different postures and that's okay, you know? When my baby needs a bath, I can't say, hey, you know, I've been in kyphosis all day long. I can't give you a bath right now. You just do it. And we're trying to get resilient to these things. So if you find yourself in this posture more than you should be, or, you know, we're all at home now, we're all sitting, we're all probably staring at computers and phones more than we have, maybe not so much, but do some things to get you more in an extended position, okay? Some things that I really like. Banded face pulls, okay? Stick a band to the door. If you've got, you know, if you've got a doorway you can use, if you're at the gym, when the gym is open again, pull and try to get those shoulder blades pinched back. Because if you notice with a C posture, those shoulder blades are separated. If you look from the behind, they're here. So if you're in this posture too much, we've got to get you more here so that those shoulder blades are pinched together, okay? And then for the S curve, typically, if you've got this position, our pelvis is tilted forward, we've got tight hip flexors and weak glutes, all right? And that's where you should spend a lot of your time, is trying to strengthen the glutes, which will in turn inhibit those hip flexors because they're on opposite sides of the joint. One's doing hip flexion, one's doing hip extension. So if you're working those glutes, you're going to improve the way you can hold the hip hinge and hopefully improve the way you swing. So that's all I've got as far as posture goes. Do you have anything else, Ryan?
No, but it looks like we have a question here. It just got typed in from Peter Goldberger. Says, not that I'm known for overthinking my golf swing or anything. Is there a specific breathing pattern you recommend for a swing? Breathe out on the downswing or something? So I've found that basically you want to breathe in on the backswing and out on the downswing if you're able to do that. And it's very similar to exercises in the gym. Brian will tell you, you really want to breathe out when you're exerting the effort, correct, Brian? So I mean, for some people, thinking about their breathing can derail them, but for others, and more times than not, it is helpful, especially if you practice it. Where you get into troubles, you just try to start doing it on the golf course. But heck, I mean, any change in your golf swing is going to be difficult if you just try to do it on the fly. But if you practice it, breathing in on the downswing will help you make sure on the backswing will help you complete your backswing, and then breathing out is a good trigger to start. So it can help your tempo, and it'll help you relax a little bit as well. Anybody that gets quick in their golf swing, they're probably not taking a full breath on their backswing, and they're probably a little bit anxious or a little bit excited. And if you monitor your breathing and you kind of breathe in and out, it'll just really help you find a good tempo and keep you in that middle ground that we're always seeking as golfers. We don't want to get too excited. We don't want to get too slow. It just will help you pace yourself.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off that, just kind of getting back to the Paul Azinger thing I said earlier. I mean, monitoring your breath is a good way to just see how your body's reacting to the situation. So if on the first tee, you're going to notice your breath is going to be pretty hurried and quick, and you'll notice you're breathing through your chest more than through your diaphragm. Take stock of that. Try to breathe in through your belly a little bit more and have a long exhale. And that'll help slow your heart rate down. It'll help calm you down. I've played many rounds of golf with Peter. He's very excited on the first tee. So I know the breathing could help him. When you get into a situation where maybe the match you're playing in is close, you're going to notice your breathing gets faster. You start to walk faster. Everything gets ticked up a bit in your swing. Take a big breath, and that'll help reset your body back to baseline and hopefully reset your swing back to its normal tempo. And just for the gym in general, breathing is really, really important. So like Ryan said, typically You want to exhale upon exertion in the gym, but the bigger thing for me is what we talked about earlier with posture. You want to be able to have that full exhale so that your rib cage comes all the way down and we don't get stuck in this position where we're walking around with our butt sticking out and our rib cage up. All right. And I see that all the time with people. So one of the things, my cue to most of my clients, regardless of what exercise we're doing, is rib cage down, glutes engaged. Okay. Because that takes them from this posture to this posture. Okay. And we're in what's called a stacked position, ribs over hips. That's really what you want for most things. And then, you know, in the golf swing in general, it's particularly important. Any other questions? You can feel free to chat them in the chat box. While we're waiting for a question, I just want to remind everybody that we have, you know, at Links pivoted over to more of a virtual offering since all of this happened a couple months ago. So anybody on the call today, if you want to take advantage of a free virtual assessment, just let us know. We've been doing virtual training sessions with golf clients, with regular gym clients, and we've moved over to that space and are offering virtual memberships to go along with, you know, our regular brick and mortar gym memberships. So if that's something you guys are interested in, just let me know, and I'd be happy to help out there.
I just want to say one other thing. If we don't have any questions at the moment, but Brian's got this 30-day workout plan that's available for golf specific. It's a combination of TPI exercises. And if you go through and assess it, you can customize those exercises for you. But even just doing a general golf specific workout, I've engaged in that over the past month, and it's really made a big difference. I can tell you, previously I was doing yoga once a week, and then I was doing our golf fitness class once a week. So those two workouts are really the only specific functional movement training I was doing, and doing his program 3 times a week has made such a difference. Just in the past week, getting out to play for the first couple of times, I can tell you that it used to be, or generally has been, the first 3 holes of a golf round, if I haven't had a chance to warm up on the range, I'm just trying to get my body to move right and find a sense of rhythm. But doing his program, I'm moving well pretty early. Well, maybe the first hole just to get kind of adapted and settled in, and then I'm ready to go. And that's without having a chance to hit any golf balls. Honestly, I'm moving like I'm 5-6 years younger. I'm approaching my 40th birthday this summer, and it's just it's really been exciting. So not that I'm trying to give you a hard sales push, but it's a true testimonial of just what's happened by using this period of being indoors to really try to get my body in a better, more ready state to play coming into the spring.
Yeah, and I think what's important about that too is just the situation we're all in, where there's no driving ranges. You know, I played golf on Saturday. You got to stay in your car until 15 minutes before the round, and you walk right to the first tee as cold as the minute that you woke up. So it's more important now to be able to, I like the phrase you used, the ready state. Just be in that state, you know, as much throughout the day as you can, and that just takes work. You know, you got to put some of the work in. A lot of it's strength training, but you know, a lot of us aren't doing the conventional strength training we've done in the past because there's no gym, but we can do a lot of the mobility work that's included in the program. And you just want to feel, you shouldn't have to spend hours throughout the day to be able to move correctly. Okay. You should be able to work on your mobility in spurts throughout the day. And after a while, you're just going to start moving better without doing any work. Okay. And that's the idea, is that you can show up to the first tee and just be ready to go on the first tee and not take 9 holes just to feel like you've loosened up. So thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. As you can see, Ryan looks good. He looks very, very lean, and he's ready to go. If you're almost 40, I don't know. That's doesn't give a lot of hope for the rest of us. You look good for 40. Anybody else got any questions for the chat? Okay. So as I said, we will be doing these every Thursday at noon. So next week we've got session 2 coming up. We're going to talk about more of the turn and the pivot. And we'll see you guys next Thursday. Thanks a lot.